we strive to build a more inclusive and diverse society, it's crucial that we recognize that neurodiversity is a key component to diversity. So hello everyone and welcome to today's podcast episode where we are joined by two incredible guests to shed light on the importance of neurodiversity in diversity space. So in honor of the Autism Week, we have Raul, who is the principal software engineer with Workday, and we have Heloiza, who is a consultant in digital marketing space. And they are here to share their first-hand experience in neurodiversity. So and we are going to get a lot of valuable advice on how we can all better understand and support those who are neurodiverse. So without further ado, let's dive into this important discussion about neurodiversity. So Raul and Heloiza, my first question to you would be, what is neurodiversity? So educate everyone on the space of neurodiversity, because as an individual, I would say that I'm naive to neurodiversity in diversity. And when I think of neurodiversity, the only one word that comes in my mind is autism. So I would like you to enlighten us.
Cool. I'll take this one first.
Okay, cool.
Technically, neurodiversity is just as simple as people brains work differently and they interpret the world differently, and that is just a different aspect of the human diversity. The key differences are like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia are like the four big topics on which brains are recognized to work differently. And my personal interest is in autism because I have two autistic kids. And while I was learning about that, I found out that I was autistic myself. I went through all the process of diagnosis, and that led me to start doing neurodiversity advocacy. And I've been doing that for like 5 years. So yeah, this pitch, I have it nailed down.
It's been 5 years that we know each other. And the day I joined Workday, we met at Workday, and I've been seeing you working towards neurodiversity from the very first day we met. Right, and Heloiza, share your, give us your introduction and share a bit about neurodiversity.
Right, thanks. My goal usually is more to raise awareness of and make it the world or the environments more inclusive for these people who are neurodiverse. And I have also personal experience. My son was he had a very big delay in speech when he was a toddler, so he doesn't even he didn't speak my mother language because I got concerned when he was 4 years old and he couldn't communicate it properly. So I started to speak English with him, so he speaks more English than my language is Portuguese, my mother language. So, but I think the characteristics that I feel that he needed a bit of support, and I got to research about it and I understand more about this. And I think I fully agree with Raul about the way that the brain just work a little bit different, and they see the world in their own way, and it could be actually an incredible experience because it's really fascinating to get to know them, the hyperfocus and the memory, the incredible memory that they have, or sometimes the way that they understand things or they do things differently, and you're like, oh, I didn't thought about that. Like, actually, it's kind of, for me, the neurodiversity is not really a disability, we can all see as a neurodiversity, and we can all improve ourselves to be more inclusive.
Yeah, can I also add in here? So I wanted to mention that every person who has told me that they have autism or disorder or they are neurodiverse, they are the most intelligent, intellectual, the smartest, and the most emotional, intelligent human beings I have met in my life. And that's a very true experience.
I would say two things about that.
Sure.
You actually touched on two very interesting points. Yeah. One is that autism is every neurodiverse is an invisible disability. You look at us, if someone is blind or is on a wheelchair or has a missing limb or something, you can see it straight away. But with autism, we just look like normal people. But we are a little bit different. So it's also considered the social model of disability. Our problems are basically on sensory dysregulation. Either we are oversensitive or undersensitive to some stuff, like noise, light, smell, whatever, movement. Yeah, and the other one is that we have problems with social interactions, like recognizing emotions, reading body language, being very literal. Those are like the typical, everyone is different, but these are like the typical ones that appear more often. So as long as society forces us to be like the other people, we are disabled. But it's not a problem within the person, it's a problem with a society that's not inclusive enough. We could be perfectly integrated in society if it was more more inclusive. Now that's for one point. The other one, Raul, that's something that is very keen to my heart. I gotta tell you a story. A few years ago, I was in a woman tech maker meeting, and I was saying something very similar. I said, every woman I work with on IT was super brilliant, and that is exactly what is wrong.
Okay.
Because that means only the good ones can thrive. Man have the chance to be average, and it's fine. But women that are average on IT, they get a very hard time. So I think the same thing happens with neurodiverse people. The ones that are very good, they can thrive, but average neurodiverse people have the right to be part of society as well. And that is the next step we have to get to. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. We've made big progress in 5 years. I'm positive.
Yeah, and Raul and Heloiza, so let's discuss about your own life experiences further. So how did you handle the real scenarios that presented in your own life? So what were your steps towards addressing it? So say when somebody gets to know that, you know, their kids or they themselves have autistic syndrome or some neurodiversity related syndrome, so what's the first reaction is, or it comes as a shock, or how the person feels or how the family feels in the first place, and what are the steps that they should take to address it? So yes, just share your own examples in details and in more depth.
Yeah, no, for me personally, it was I was already expecting that he would be a bit different because he was a different kind of baby. But when I got the diagnosis actually from the HSE, then I was like, whoa, you know, what do I do now? But then you have an instinct as a parent to, I want to make my child better. But it's not really better in the fact of, in the area of neurodiversity. It's more like, I want him to be more like all the other children. And this is a bit difficult because it's like you want your child to fit in a way that like they wouldn't suffer things like bullying, or they wouldn't be suffering negative judgments and things like that from the society, the community. So to be more to be easily insert in the community, you know, that would be maybe, I think, a goal as a parent. You wouldn't be just thinking, I want my child to do well in school, because I think it's more about the social skills and the speaking skills, in my opinion, or also some type of behavior. So for example, one crash ages ago, when before he was diagnosed, they used to call me, oh my God, your child is like, his terrible behavior, he doesn't want to do the activity at all, or he would go bang his head in the wall, you know, it was that kind of stuff. So you was aware, for me, that you have to be aware of like sense of danger for them. Terrible. They when they're young, they don't have a very good sense of danger. So you wouldn't want to have them crossing a busy street, you know, with someone that is not aware of neurodiversity. And also the fact of self-harm for me was the most difficult. And I think a lot of people can relate, because neurodiverse kids or teenagers, they tend to be on the way of self-harm. They get frustrated with themselves, or they have the lack of communication skills, and then that tends to they be angry with themselves, and they transform this anger in self-harm. So for me, it was a huge amount of work I had to do through that, but thank God we are there and we got it, and you know, now it's really well controlled. But I feel for all the parents who don't, and I really hope that community and everybody around you that have patience to deal with these kind of situations, or we try to raise awareness and make people understand that like, look, the person in front of you sometimes in the queue or in the steps or this and that could be like, could get upset, hurt themselves, or like, they don't want to go on the stairs, or like, or be aware, or how can you help, or, they have a hidden disability as well. So always, I think to raise awareness around the community or the town that you live in. So that would be very important, and for business as well.
And just quickly, I want to ask you that you have once mentioned about the COVID times. We had a conversation during the Women in Sports Week on COVID and its challenges. So, how did you overcome that this scenario when COVID was happening? So,
and also,
was there challenges during COVID?
Yes, because as Raul said before, there was the high support kids and the low support kids. It's a different type of neurodiversity, and in the case of the low support kids, they need a bit less support to do the normal routine tasks. And then what happened with us is one of these things is that they cut the support for those kids in Ireland in that time. So I had no choice, and I had to try to do my own thing. So I went through research that I found online. Usually from therapists that put the PDF in websites from universities and things like that. And then I got to one thing as well in Portugal that calls it's a type of therapy anyway, but I will remember the name. And then they have an exercise routine that we can do like in a patio or in a grass or in a garden. And then we used to do this exercise every day, and it's a kind of a circuit to help the neurodiverse kids to regulate themselves. And they get more calm, and so they can go through those phases better, because they don't tolerate change well. So the lockdown, I think it was a huge change and impact a lot of people with neurodiverse or hidden disabilities, and it was really, really challenging times for them. So it helps them to adapt. So this kind of, they call sensory diet or sensory exercises and sensory tools, it helps them to adapt to change better. That's what I found. Yeah.
So let's move on to Raul now. Raul,
I was wanting to build on what Heloiza was saying. The thing about sensory dysregulation is that if you have too much input of anything or too low input of anything, your body is needing that, and then you cannot focus on anything else. So if you are oversensitive to light or to noise, if you are having too much noise, even in some places where normal people will not have a problem, you cannot focus. If your body needs to move, if you are not getting enough movement, you cannot focus. And if you need twice as many movement as a neurotypical kid, then you have to do that. I mean, at home we have an indoor trampoline, we have an indoor swing, we have all these things. We have wobbly chairs, so the kids can actually be moving while they are sitting. We have like
the hammock,
wobbly cushions. Like my kids are high support kids, so they have all the things. What I found myself for my own experience is that when I was diagnosed, I made a big introspection, and I realized I have been collecting coping mechanisms for myself without knowing that they were coping mechanisms. So whenever I need to do something, I do it in a special way that it's easier for me. I do a lot of stimming. Stimming is solved for self-stimulation. It's a type of movement that helps you focus. For example, I do play a lot with pens, like I keep moving them around, or I move my body from one leg to the other, or things like that to keep me focused. This is something that is very typical in neurodiverse people, in particular in autism. That's one thing. The other one, you just touching. We did this conversation about high support and low support before we actually started recording. So I think the audience have not heard this part. There's this label of high functioning and low functioning, which is very harmful, and instead we should use high support and low support. And that's the example I was going to give. Is if someone has a lot of needs to join society, is a person that has high support needs. It's not a low functioning person. This is a very harmful. It implies that they cannot do things. My example for this, think Stephen Hawking. I don't think anyone will call Stephen Hawking low functioning, but he definitely had high support needs. And that's the point of view I want to give. And on the other side, if you call someone high functioning, you are diminishing the need of support, because yes, I have low support needs, but I still have my struggles. So if you call me high functioning, you're pretty much saying you don't need any support. So it's not good for the people that you call low functioning, but it's not good for the people that you call high functioning either. So instead of that, we call high support needs or low support needs, and it's a much better term, and it helps putting everybody in the right place.
Right. And Raul, I see that you also read some books. So would you like to show the audience about the books that can help them get more perspective on neurodiversity?
Oh God, I have so many books.
Yeah.
I have books for therapies and all that stuff, like Heloiza probably has read most of the same books. Mm-hmm. But what I found very interesting is memoirs, like books written from autistic adults from their point of view. And to me, these books were like, yeah, this sounds like me. But other people, neurotypical people that read them, found them very interesting. So I have like 3 of them that I particularly enjoyed. That's called Odd Girl Out, because also women in autism are very underrepresented. This is another woman. It's called I Overcame My Autism, and all I got was this Lucy anxiety disorder. She's great. This is a very funny book. And there's this one called Look Me in the Eye. This is a little bit bigger. And this one was this is one of the oldest person that was diagnosed in the very early days. Or the diagnosis has changed names many times and scope as well. So these 3 books are very interesting first-person stories. If you want to know a lot about autism, this is like the biggest compendium called Neurodiverse. That's a thick book.
Right.
But it tells all the story, and it should really go through. If you're really interested, this is the best book you can read. It is a commitment.
Right.
But it's a great read.
Great. And now I have another question. So again, with on neurodiversity, we speak about autism, and there are other scenarios to this too. But are they, so we talk a lot about, like, we are soon, there is April 2, the World Autism Week. And we also include ADHD and other syndromes into it? Or have we seen that autistic cases are more in comparison to the rest of the syndromes that we have seen? So enlighten us a bit about it.
It's not that it's more autistic people. I think
there's
more people with ADHD than autism, but we try to focus on one thing at a time. Okay. So that day is specifically to raise awareness of autism, or I think awareness is pretty much there, but it's more about rooting for inclusion and accommodations in society. So it's about telling people that we exist. In my head, it's similar to the Gay Pride Day, you know? Like, it's about, we're here, and we want you to see that we actually exist. Please don't look away, we are still here. You ignore them, we are going to still exist. That's what this is about. Of course, we don't want to say... We don't want to say ADHD doesn't exist, but this particular one is just focused on autism. There's another date for ADHD, which is its own set of struggles as well, but understand.
Right, and also one thing I wanted to touch base on, because this is so strong. I heard recently that it's not a right thing to do. It's a very tough question. That it's not a right thing to address someone with, all right, do you have an autistic syndrome, or do you have a ADHD syndrome? So it's better that we use neurodiverse as a word there to represent those scenarios. So Heloiza, would you like to talk about on that how it's important to use a certain words to address different scenarios?
So in my case, for example, I am part of the Parents Teachers Association in one of the Educate Together schools, which is like my child's school. And I got into the PTA with this intention to get the school to better themselves in the neurodiversity area. So I suggest to the school, and they will gladly got my suggestion this year to do the Neurodiversity Week, and that we are going to do a lot of activities surround like about a hyperfocus, for example. So I suggest that parents do that in schools, or also the teachers, to read more about it or to get to know more about neurodiversity. And even if they're not special needs teachers or SNAs, or if they don't, or if they work in a unit, I think that the normal mainstream teachers, they should have more knowledge about that aspect of the kid and the way that their brain works. But and also the school that we are gonna have, for example, hyperfocus activity. So that would consist in the teacher telling the kids to draw or talk or write about something that they are focused or they are into, or their favorite things. Like we could be a food, could be like a sport or something or a place that they like to go, or a movie that they watch that they got, because you have these kids that sometimes they get glued in a certain subject, and we call that hyperfocus. That's what happened, and this is very common with neurodiverse kids and people in general. So so we are just getting the qualities of these kids and try to make them teach the other pupils about it. So they usually will discuss that in the group of friends, and then tell them, "Oh, look!" And I don't know, one of my son's friends used to be obsessed with Titanic. You know, he's neurodiverse, and then he used to tell all about it. He knew everything about the ship. He knew everything about the movie. He knew everything about the year that the ship hit the iceberg. Everything. So they're very incredible, intelligent about the facts that they have a hyperfocus on. So I think we should explore. We should explore all these abilities that they actually have. That's very interesting.
That's a fascinating topic. So I think you're talking about two things in there. One is a special interest. It's like when we are into something, we're really into something. Like, why would I care about this topic just lightly? If I care about this topic, I do care about this topic. And then there's the other ability to hyperfocus, is to completely focus on what you are doing. This was an interesting story. In my time at my university, I was when I was studying for the exams, I was able to hyperfocus and when I was studying. So I will put music, and then I will stop hearing the music, and I wouldn't realize of that, and then an hour will have gone, and I will have made like a gigantic progress. And years later, I realized that this is not something that everybody can do. I was like, what do you mean? How do you get things done then? You cannot hyperfocus. Like, I didn't even knew it was called hyperfocus. But it's like when I'm into something, I'm completely out of the world. I completely block.
Yeah. I used to say, it feels like that horse maybe that had this covered here, and we just like have a narrow vision of something. It's incredible.
For particularly as a software engineer, I find it super useful on my work. Being able to hyperfocus on, like, in 1 hour I can get like half a day of work or even more. If I really, it's very hard to get in hyperfocus mode. But if you manage to do it, the amount of work that you get done is incredible. And the special interest is just things that we enjoy and we like. So funny enough, after my kids were diagnosed, I got a special interest on actual autism itself. That's why I ended up with an entire bookshelf of books about autism, therapies, stories, and all that stuff, because I just got into it. So the other thing, Cheryl, before sorry to jump on that. You were talking about naming. It's very important. We call it neurodiverse to just represent that it's a different type of perceiving the world and being just diversity. But there's the other thing about, it's called the person first language and identity first language. This is a big discussion online. A lot of clinical people that want to treat autism use what they call the person first language, which is person with autism. Most of the self-advocates prefer the identity first language, which is autistic person. It sounds like it's very much the same, but it's a big difference. I'm an autistic person. I'm autistic. I am not a person with autism because I am a person nevertheless. I am not a person from Spain. I'm not a person without hair. I'm bald. I'm Spanish. I'm autistic. That's what I mean. It's a part of who I am,
Yeah.
and it's an important part of my identity. So that's why I personally prefer to say I'm an autistic person instead of I am a person with autism. It's a very heated up topic.
Yeah.
That's my point of view as a self-advocate.
Yeah.
I find that is a very important part of my identity. And as part of that, there's people trying to cure autism, and we absolutely disagree with that. As much difficulties as my kids will have, and they are high support kids, if you cure them, you're going to turn them into a completely different person. And then you will have a kid that looks exactly the same from the outset, but it will be a different person.
True.
And if someone offers me a cure for me not being autistic, I will say, no, thank you. I know who I am. I have my struggles, but this part of who I am, and I don't want to be a different person.
Right.
So when kids have problems expressing themselves and they are struggles in communication, they cannot tell you that. But some people feel the need to cure autism. We don't need a cure. We need an inclusive society.
Definitely. And that's what diversity is, inclusion of everyone in the space. And with normal people, like we always say that term, be yourself, believe in yourself, don't let the world impact your person. So it applies for everyone in the diverse space. So, and we all who say we are normal beings, we all do the same thing every single day, that be yourself. Don't try to let the world impact you. So it goes for everyone. Now, another question, Heloiza and Raul, is about businesses and corporates. So how do businesses and corporates should people?
I will just give some tips because I have a very short time, sorry. But I would like just to mention, for example, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. Sometimes a bit overwhelming for neurodiverse people or children. When we go to a place to eat or a place to buy something or some services, and we don't have a visual menu or visual schedule of everything. So I really advise for people to maybe make a flyer or a type of a visual communication advertising with whatever service products that they have, in pictures like flashcards or photographs or clip art or some kind of graphics that it's much easier than have a bunch of words. So for example, if you own a restaurant, or instead of write the sandwich and everything, if you had a menu for neurodiverse people or kids, you have the picture of all your food, the picture of the bag of chips, or picture of a salad, or everything that you sell. That would be amazing, and that would be extremely helpful, and also for coffee shops as well. So thank you. That's my suggestion here.
Someone that's done that really well is Dublin Airport.
All right.
It's funny. I mean, we're not going to say only the things that we are missing. We're going to say the things that are good. The Dublin Airport has a special program for autistic where you give them a special badge, and everybody in the airport will recognize that. But as part of that, they also have an entire section on the airport about pictures, what to expect. This is how the queue looks like. This is how the waiting area looks like. These are photos of the security place. So you can actually get all of those and show it to your kid, or maybe actually make a social story. But they have all these pictures prepared for them, and they are really good. And then you also have sensory areas in the airport where you can chill out when you are overwhelmed. And all that, I think Dublin Airport is doing a really good job on inclusion. So just very happy with them.
And I also thought public transports or also dentists would be great, because sometimes people are anxious when they go to the dentist. Some kids don't have a clue, or they don't know what to expect. So the neurodiverse kids, if you have a picture of the cleaning teeth or the instruments or something, and just to illustrate everything would be great. And I don't know, I think in the public transports they are good, but I think it should be a training for the drivers to wait a tiny bit sometimes for takeoff or come back with the train, bus, whatever, or just wait a tiny bit, because sometimes it's a neurodiverse person trying to go downstairs in the double-decker bus and things like that. So I think it's important.
They did the Just a Moment, the jump card, and they also put another hidden disability campaign on the Dart. about people that need a seat. I don't need to explain this.
Yes,
Please.
I think that is amazing. Dublin bus can have a room for improvement, and I think the zebra crossings as well. They should have a tiny bit, I don't know, an extra signal or something for the busy crossings, the busy streets, things like that, or roads and speed limits. I don't know, because sometimes I just get really scared, like the cars are speeding up so much, and like you have so many neurodiverse kids trying to cross the streets, and yeah, especially in school areas, very busy.
And to double down on what Heloiza is saying, you wouldn't remove the braille signs in an elevator. You wouldn't take out the entry ramps on a building. This is the same. It's just in a different way. So you wouldn't remove the pictures from a menu or things like that. And yeah, it's the same sort of things, except that ones have been there for a longer time and we're used to see them, and these are coming now and they are still new. So we're not used to them. But my hope is that in a few years' time, we will see them in the same light. You will not remove the braille signs so people can read them. You will not remove the entry ramps or the buses that go low. Like, why would you remove these other accommodations, right?
Yeah. Right. So thinking about the time now, Heloiza. So it's
I will have to go.
Right. You have to go. And Raul, would you like to stay? Would you have other thoughts to add to this conversation?
I think we covered a lot of the important stuff.
Right.
I would say we're just people. We're just different. We see the world in a different way. That is one of our advantages. We bring a completely different perspective without even trying. Yeah. And there's a lot of benefits of having people that is very different from you around you, in your work, in your family, in your circle of friends. And we're just different. But it's fine.
If anybody is very concerned about the topic, or if there has any challenge in home, or someone with that's close family that have neurodiverse, I think we could do a round 2, maybe about specific things or something. So I'm available wherever you can contact me. Thank you so much for
that's
your time.
Fantastic, Heloiza. And Heloiza, you're also running a charity for autism during the week as well. So I'll provide link to that Eventbrite. I think it's an event. I'm
doing the SIM.ie. I'm doing the Dublin Marathon, and I'm going to be supporting SIM.ie. So you can watch me run there. It's going to be a challenge for me as well.
And Raul, you have spoken on neurodiversity earlier, so I'll also provide the link to your conversation where you discuss about the engineer's disorder, think different perspective. So, and also in the end, I will say that neurodiverse people are so unique and in their own different ways, and they are the highly intelligent, emotional. I say EQ, the highest EQ I have ever experienced. Raul, on that, I remember I also have your emotional intelligence book with me till today.
That's fine. You can keep it. I already read it. No, I was going to say.
Guys. And thank you guys.
So I have to go. Bye.
That's perfect. That's great. And this conversation will help a lot of people. And we can do another session if there come some questions on unique perspectives. Super. Thank you, Heloiza.
Bye.
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 Bye.